Welcome to episode of the Unspoken Truths of Digital Leadership. Today I have an amazing guest, Claire Dowdall from the Expert Focus podcast.
Hi.
And we are privileged to have her to talk about the unspoken truths of digital leadership and what that means for her, because this is an open for interpretation. But I want to find out more about the journey of other people that goes through the choice of leading or the choice of leadership in their world. So Claire, please, could you introduce yourself to us?
I can. I'm going to try and light myself up a little bit because I realised I'm look like I'm sat in the dark. So tell me if that makes a difference. Hopefully you can see me a little bit better now. Yeah, there you go, little tricks there. Okay, so hi, I'm Claire Dowdell. So a little bit about me. So I have a podcast. That's what a few people know me for. I'm currently recording season 2. Season 1 actually ended just over a year ago. So I've been itching to get back onto it. So I'm in the midst of the joy of tech right now, getting all that sorted, which is good fun. But I've actually been in marketing for, I guess, about 18 years now.
Wow.
So yeah, so my first consulting client, I actually hadn't left university yet. I was 21, I think, just about to do my finals, and I was approached and asked if I could do a marketing strategy for a very interesting local business, which did stag and hen parties. So that's pretty cool. So I ended up going on a quad biking afternoon one of the times just to go, check it out. So that was the beginning of my kind of life in marketing. And back then there was barely any digital marketing. We never got taught about it. We've all kind of learned that stuff as we've gone along pretty much. I had 7 years in corporate marketing before I decided that was just enough for me, and probably was enough before that point.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And for the last, believe it or not, the last 10 years, I've worked for myself. Did the usual thing of, when a marketer's made redundant, our first thought is, I want to go and do marketing for other companies as like an outsourced kind of person, do some freelance stuff. So that's what I started off doing. And then I ended up doing more down the mentoring and training route. So worked with mainly solo entrepreneurs and startups to begin with, and have just evolved over time. And now I work with a couple of really high profile speakers. And my main love in marketing is content. Hence the podcast, because podcasts are just brilliant as like a central piece of content. And I also have a thing for, real experts being seen above fake experts, because there's a few of those around. Because it's an interesting world we operate in.
It is, and this is exactly how we met as well, in the events industry, but also in the personal development industry. I guess this is our background.
Yeah.
And both of us have served and learnt and worked with different mentors and different leaders. And I'm curious about your experience, really, of what happens, because what I would like to find out more about is what happened when your values didn't align with those speakers or those people. We all have clients that we don't align with, and we tend to fire them because we just don't align with them. But how about people that are paying your salary, that you worked with them for a number of years and you hold them to the highest regard, you respect them very much, but how did it come to the point where you decided enough was enough and it didn't align with your personal values?
It's a really difficult one, because when you work with somebody that's quite high profile and you've worked them for a long time, or especially when you work in something like marketing and you have access to how things work behind the scenes, the types of messages and emails they receive, and that can be very interesting. And sometimes the person that other people see is not the same as the person that you see. And that means that you're put in a position of trust. So you're in an almost privileged position that you get to see what happens behind the scenes. But equally, it's expected that what you do know about that person is, you know, strictly for you to know. So you put in like that sort of position, which is quite interesting. And what I've learned to always remember is that it is never your place to get involved in the stuff that maybe you don't like so much about them, and to see, okay, you are there for a purpose, you're there to do a job, and as far as anything else is concerned, it's kind of immaterial. You're not there to kind of break the trust between you and that person. So that's one thing. And I guess when I think about people that I've worked with, so not just people who've been clients, but people who have been my boss, or in the case of my stint in network marketing, my upline, I haven't always aligned with how they do things. And that can be really difficult when you almost wish that you didn't know the other side to them. And you kind of want to park it and almost, you know, have a bit of amnesia about it, so that you can continue to like really support what they do and be, you know, a big advocate for them as a leader. And I've had experiences where I have seen behaviors in bosses where they have maybe, I had one boss once when I was actually employed who, you know, as it turns out, he ended up going to prison. So he was not a good person. And he was a real bully, like horrible bully. But in public, he was amazingly successful. And look at what he's built, and look how amazing he is, and look what a positive, fun person he is. And then you get to know that person behind the scenes, and you can't say anything because it never turns out well.
Yeah.
If you start to tell the outside world what you see, how is that going to benefit anybody? It doesn't benefit the person you're talking about. It doesn't benefit the person that knows that information, because it just turns into gossip, and that just feeds negativity.
Yeah.
And it's never going to turn out well for you, because, you know, if they find out that information's been shared, it will never reflect well on you. So, but when you've got this kind of, you're trying to be ethical, you have a moral compass, and you don't believe that person's everything that they appear to be, it's deciding what is actually best for me. And that is usually just keeping it quiet and keeping everything compartmentalized between professional, what you're there to do, and everything else.
And what kind of consequences, you know, the consequences that we face when we talk about these issues is that we don't talk about them. I think these are the unspoken truths that I guess I'm talking about, or getting people, the guests to talk about, is when do we keep quiet and let people suffer?
No, I don't think it's okay to, if there's somebody actually really suffering in this situation, I think it's really difficult not to want to say something. I'm just trying to think of the level. It's like, whether, is it your place? And again, is kind of exposing this behavior going to turn out well for anybody? Well, equally, if it's not exposed, how many people is it going to hurt? So, for instance, if I've seen people I've had messages from people about, they've paid money to somebody for, let's say it's a digital course, and they were promised a bullet point list of different things. You know, we were supposed to receive a workbook, and then there was supposed to be a live stream, but it never happened. And then we were supposed to have one-to-one, 15-minute calls every month, but I've only had 2 in the last 6 months. And they're not really sure what to do about it. And then someone else comes to you and says the same thing, and it's like, oh, what do you do about that person? That person could be helping loads of people and trying their very best, and there just could be a couple of people who slip through the net. And I think the key thing is to find out what the real story is, rather than, oh, that's terrible, aren't they an awful person? But to actually have a really open and candid conversation with that person, if you know them, and especially if it's somebody that you work with, or either they pay you money or even you pay them money, because there's still a kind of two-way trust there. I think conversations should be had if you know that the outcome is going to be, can be positive going forward. Some people you can't change, and that's just the way it is. But I don't think I could sit and watch somebody ripping other people off and not say a word. But there's a way of doing it, and I'm not a fan of the whole name and shame publicly. I think everyone deserves a chance to have, say their piece and have the opportunity to do the right thing and make a change, because I think everyone should. I just think it's fair, even when on the face of it something terrible has happened. I really believe in justice for people. I hate injustice. I couldn't stand it if somebody thought wrongly of me and it was actually not the entire story. And if I didn't have a chance to defend myself, I'd be so upset. And I think everyone has that side to them. I don't think anybody is made of stone. So I think, that there's an ethical side both ways. So the victim may not be who you think the original victim is. The victim could be the person that is accused of doing something negative or behaving in a certain way. So it's not always about ripping people off. It could just be about how they've behaved towards them, that they said something to them, or just in the heat of the moment. You just don't know.
It's a very grey area.
I
would say, because there's you have people that's out there revealing entrepreneurs or things like that about scam artists, and I'm sure this happens in every industry. It isn't just in personal development. It happens in property, it happens in builders, it happens in plumbing, it happens in even shops, retailers and stuff. That happens
you see
as well.
You remember things, TV programs like Cowboy Builders or Watchdog, and you reminded me of one particular example from the property industry, which I'm sure you know which one I mean. I'm not going to say the name of the person because it's got nothing to do with me. I don't know the person. But when you see this person is a scam artist and you need to watch this video and isn't it terrible and everyone should share this, and you think, but where is the truth? I would rather see a discussion with that person talking about, okay, so tell us what really happened, and give them the opportunity to kind of say their piece. I also think, does it ever feel good to out that person? So it will feel good if you're going to help a lot of people. So in the example of a cowboy builder, for instance, someone who's been going around and they've been starting work, they've been taking money up front and they've never been completing it. You hear about that kind of fairly regularly. They end up on Watchdog. Then you've got like 10 different people said, yes, they scammed me. Yes, they scammed me. Yes, they scammed me. Absolutely 100%. They deserve to be named and shamed if they have repeatedly done the same thing. And it is clear that they have no morals at all. They don't intend to stop. And, whoever it is, Dominic Littlewood, the little bald guy, drives up to them to go and say hello, and they drive off because they're just too ashamed of what they've done. That's got to happen in any industry. Personal development is a big one because it's not about doing a dodgy job on someone's bathroom. It's about people having real deeply emotional responses to being ripped off or being missold something, and there are examples from that property scenario where somebody actually took their own life as a result of having invested in something that wasn't what they thought it was. That is when things get really, really serious.
Yeah.
When it's more down to, oh, this person's a bit of an idiot and they keep behaving like this, and aren't they, what they say, all these things, and they're controversial, they're not actually hurting anybody. They're not taking their money and they're not ruining their lives. They're just being who they are, and you might not agree with it, but it's not actually hurting anybody directly. But yeah, I don't believe in naming and shaming unless it's really warranted, and unless you've got evidence that enough people have kind of suffered at the hands of however this person's behaved. And you don't want to be the person that says this person's done this thing and actually it ends up coming back on you. Mm-hmm. So I think you've got to be really careful as well.
So clear communication, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just think everyone deserves the opportunity to say their piece. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. I think it's just a matter of respect, unless there's overwhelming evidence that clearly they have no interest in defending themselves against their behaviour. So it's just something I've not really thought about. So this is quite an interesting conversation.
Well, I'm just keen to find out your take on people's behaviours, and do people really understand where they're going wrong until someone tells them, or they've never been taught about it, so they don't actually know that it's wrong? What's good, what's bad, right? Everyone's got different perspectives.
Yeah, it could be. I think it can be down to naivety. They just don't realise, they don't see it. They needed somebody to kind of point it out, or they've just got a lack of experience. But in a lot of cases, they will know what they're doing, and they've behaved that way for so long with minimal consequences that in their head it's become an acceptable thing. So it's being able to see which of those is actually the case. And I think sometimes in the situation where somebody has sold a product, whether it's a digital product or service or an actual physical product, and they've not delivered on what they've promised, is that because they don't want to deliver on what they promised and they never intended to, or is it because perhaps they took on too much and they were struggling to deliver, and whatever product or service they had a higher interest than they anticipated? They didn't have the infrastructure and the systems in place to be able to deliver. So it wasn't that they weren't going to and they were trying to scam people, but they just were in over their heads. Yeah. And I think if you can be honest about which of those you are, that's when you can actually keep the respect of people, hold your hands up and say, I made a mistake. This is the reason why. I've learned from it. This is how I'm going to make it right, and just put it all out there. And that's when you gain the respect of people. And that's when you don't have, you're not burning bridges, and there is there's a possibility that you can salvage that relationship and salvage your reputation at the same time.
Because that's the thing about people going into business, is that we'd never taught how to go into business. And
yeah, even if you get taught business, you don't know what it's like until you're doing it.
Yes. And then there's people say there's certain rules and regulations and things you kind of follow, but until you're in it, you don't actually know what the etiquette is. You don't know what's wrong, what's bad, or what's good, or what's bad. And
there's an element of common sense there. I mean, we all, use your common sense and you pretty much won't go wrong. I always say, marketing is not complicated. Much of it is common sense. You don't develop a product without someone telling you that they need it. You don't solve a problem unless it exists. If you don't know who your customer is, how are you going to find them? And how are you going to know what to say to them? So I always say it is common sense from the perspective of how well you do what you do, but also how you conduct yourself. It's just common courtesy. It's, does this feel right? Is this going to make me look, am I going to end up in a positive light through this action? Is this going to look good to my customers? All of those sorts of things. Reputation is such a massive thing, but I think a lot of reputation could be managed just by being a good human being and just having a bit of common sense. So I don't think it could be taught, but I think you kind of already have it as long as you're a half decent human being.
There's a lot of self-awareness work required for common sense, because what we think is common may not be so common at all. Interesting enough.
Yeah, and we're experiencing this right now with how people are reacting to lifting the lockdown. And for me, I think, well, what feels like this is a good idea and what feels like this is probably not safe. But not everybody has the same, you know, they may not judge situations in the same way. They may not have the knowledge of what constitutes taking a risk.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think, and I've experienced this in business, is that I tend to I'm quite risk averse and I overthink. And it's because I almost know too much. And that's not me saying I'm amazing and I know everything. This is me saying I went to university and I did a postgrad and I've worked in corporate, and I have a lot of knowledge in my head, and that knowledge can hold me back from taking a risk.
Yeah.
When you have less knowledge and detail, I feel like you're more likely to take more risks because you're not overthinking all the information in your head. I think that's a big difference. I think it makes it really hard for people like me.
I agree, because I fall under the same thing is, you know, with digital marketing, I know a lot of the systems, the technicals, implementations, making all the systems work, all the nitty gritty things of making autoresponders and all the fancy stuff behind the scenes. But when it comes out to bringing it out to the light and go, this is what I can do, I'm just like,
What if it's not perfect? What if it doesn't look good? What do people expect of me? What do I expect of myself? I don't think it's good enough. All of that stuff. There's just, we know the biggest thing that holds people back is not a lack of knowledge. It's never a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of, it's mindset, and it's just not executing. And whatever holds you back from executing is the problem. And like I say, it's more mindset than knowledge. It always is.
And it's funny you say this, because you've also touched upon today, even that subject of, if you want to share with us what you shared today.
Yeah, so I did a post this morning, which was about what stops you from telling the world what you're brilliant at. And I said that on purpose because I've asked a similar question before, which is around what are you an expert in? And people have a real issue with that word of expert, saying, oh, you can't call yourself an expert. That means you're really arrogant. You think you're amazing. You can only have somebody else call you an expert. You can't refer to yourself as one. And I'm like, that's a load of rubbish. Why did we decide that was the case? So that's the first thing. But the one today about what stops you telling the world about what you're brilliant at. Most people are shy, and the main thing that I saw in the comments on that post was that they don't really know what they're brilliant at. And I'm like, okay, one person's brilliant is another person's, well, that's easy. So what comes easy to me won't come easy to other people. And I use the example of my friend Louise, who's really creative, and she does crochet. Now, I am like the least likely person ever to crochet anything. I tried it once and I just gave up because I wasn't really good at it straight away. It's just the type of person I am. So I just kind of like, do you know what? That's not for me. She will make the most beautiful things, like, you know, gorgeous woolly hats, little toys, decorations, absolutely beautiful. And if you say to her, what do you think you're brilliant at? She'll be like, I don't think I'm really brilliant at anything. And I'll say, but look at the stuff that you create. And she'll be like, well, that's just easy. I just do that in front of the TV. And I'm like, I think you're brilliant at it. I would never be able to do it. So when you see it that way round, you'll sit and you'll do things each day just automatically. You know, I automatically know, I don't know, how to use Zoom, for example, or how to use StreamYard. It's, you know, I haven't used StreamYard that much, but I figured it out because I've used a few of the things. Someone else might be absolutely overwhelmed. Someone who's never worked from home right now has been told by their employer, we need you to log in each day and we need you to use Zoom. We need you to work remotely. And they're like, what? What has happened to my world? And other people will be like, well, this is something that I do every single day.
Mm.
And they're like, wow, that's amazing. You're really good at this stuff. And I'm like, am I? And I think what you need to do is see yourself from other people's perspectives. And that kind of links to the sort of definition of what makes somebody an expert. And it isn't that they are the very best in the whole entire world at the thing they do, because who is? There would be like so few of them. How would you decide who they are? It is about that you have something you can teach somebody else about that topic or that skill. It only needs to be a few people. You just need to know, say you sat in the pub, surrounded by people, there's likely to be something that amongst that group of people you're really good at, that they would go, oh, I could never do that. And you would be really surprised. I mean, I have no issue standing on a stage or doing a live stream or anything like that. To me, that's just normal for me. To other people, they would rather die. And that's an extreme example, but it is kind of one of those things. It comes up really high with one of the biggest fears is standing on stage is almost as big a fear as dying. Yes. So whereas for me, I'm like, hand me that mic and let's see what we can do. Mm-hmm. And that's where you've got to, think which is your standing on stage compared to other people. What that does is that means that people will see themselves in a different way. So if they lack confidence, they can find confidence in that one thing. If they can start talking about it and saying, I really love this, and I think I'm pretty good at it, or people keep telling me that I'm really good at this. When you can say, people tell me I'm really good at this, then you have the full permission to say, I have something I'm brilliant at, and I'm going to tell some more people. And maybe they might pay me money. Wouldn't that be nice?
That's exactly.
There are too many people who are saying they're experts, who just are able and confident somehow enough to shout about it or throw a load of ad budget at it. But what about the people who are experts, but they just can't see it? It's like, there's so much potential inside so many people. And that's kind of that's where my sort of mission is. That's why I focus on, talking about expert businesses, talking about the skills that people have and how people can communicate more about what they do.
That's one thing that my fiance, funny enough, struggles with was before she got started with baking cakes. Mm-hmm. She has always enjoyed baking from the beginning. But because no one else commented on her cakes, or she never showed anyone what she could do, no one really knew about her. But until I kept telling her, you're amazing what you do, your baking skills are phenomenal, why aren't you selling these, why aren't you have your own business, and it took years for me to get that message across until she started showing them. Then she started getting more comments, likes, people saying, ordering cakes off her and saying, these are amazing, they look beautiful, how do you do it? And she's like, oh, I just love making them, or love baking.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, that's what you're really good at, so flaunt it, show it off, like it's a skill. Because you tell me to go in the kitchen, I don't know where to start.
I just don't have the patience. It's one of those things, I probably could bake a cake, but I just don't have the desire or the patience for it. And I admire people who do. So it's not that I think it's not a good thing to do, or, I love eating them. So I would bake one to eat one. So there's that, but I could equally go to the shop, or if somebody else bakes it for me, then I'm really happy. But I think that's the thing, when you see things like talent shows and you see the person who walks out on stage looking really, really nervous, and then they they can barely look at the judges, they can't speak, and then they start to sing.
Yeah.
And this amazing talent comes out, and they have a standing ovation, and they had no idea how good they were. I mean, yes, they've gone on something like that. That takes real bravery. They must know there's something, but they just needed that feedback for them to see it properly for themselves and go, actually, maybe I am good at this. I think there are so many people who deserve to have that opportunity, way above those who have more confidence than they actually have skill. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I think having the confidence to say, I am really good at this is a great thing and should be encouraged. But where it's more shouting over the actual substance, that's where I have an issue.
Is it choosing to lead by example, like choosing to be upfront?
I don't think you have to lead in order to set an example for other people. You don't have to be the top dog in order to be a leader.
But leading yourself first.
Yeah, I guess so. I think if you rely on somebody else to lead you, then you're not taking full responsibility. And that's where, when people say, oh, I really want to hire a coach because I need somebody to hold me accountable. And you're like, is that what you really need? I think it's Dino that has talked about this before. It's about, you do not need accountability from other people. You need to take responsibility for yourself. And when you learn to take the emphasis off saying, can you just tell me I just need someone to tell me what to do, towards, I need to take full responsibility for the things that I need to do, whether anybody can see me or not. Mm-hmm. That is the big thing. And that's when you actually lead yourself. No one can necessarily see it. Only you know. And one of my friends, mentors and clients, Phil Jones, always says that people will do one of two things that they find fun, or the things that they get checked on. They don't do anything else. When you think about the things that you do every day, there are things that you'll get checked on, and those are things that you need to do. Like, you can't go through life without, washing your clothes or getting your kids up in the morning or whatever. So those are your responsibilities. They're the things you get checked on. Then outside of those things that you have to do, the things that you want to do, you're not going to do anything outside of that. You're not going to sit and do your admin if you didn't think that HMRC would have a problem if you didn't do it. Right?
Yes.
So that's learning to lead yourself. And it isn't just about what's on my to-do list every day. Mm-hmm. It's about, what am I actually responsible for? It is my responsibility to grow my business, to step up, to develop myself. It's nobody else's. So I think always looking outside for answers is another one. So if you come up against a problem in your business, or you want to get to the next stage in it, it's so easy to seek answers from the outside if you lack confidence. So if you're like, I can't possibly know what the right next step is, but everyone else probably knows better than me. And it's like, how can they know better than you? They only know their own experience. They don't know the whole of you. Only you know the whole of you. So there's a very good chance in many situations where, if you took out your phone and you turned on the voice recorder on your phone and you started talking about the thing that you have a block with, you will eventually come up with your own answer. So, as you can probably guess, I am quite a verbal person. I like to get things out. I like whiteboards and writing on those, and that helps me get thoughts out my head. But when I speak my problems or my issues or my obstacles out, I come up with my own answers. And I feel like that's the best coach you could ever have. Is it's all in there. Just give yourself a place to get it out. So even if you hire a coach and say, a couple of hours a week, can I just talk at you? And you just sit there and kind of maybe nod a little bit sometimes, so I know you're listening. And then you're like, yeah, actually, I think I've just answered my question. I'm done. Goodbye. They don't have to be an expert, just a human, or just a dog.
I love that, because that's how I get my own answers, is by speaking to the camera, to the audience. Like even on whatever platform I'm on, it's just speaking out the things that are coming through, the challenges I'm having, and then I'm just like, oh, I just found my own answer.
Yeah.
From
some
speaking.
people get it from journaling, so they might write it, but frankly, it's too slow for me. If I type it, if you type it, it's too easy to edit it. It's too easy to delete and start again and try and perfect it. But when you speak, you can't go back and cut out the words, and you can do it as fast as you like. And if you use them, I realized actually recently that you can message yourself in a Slack channel, and you can speak into it and it will dictate it automatically. So that's very easy. There you go, top tip there. I think you can do it in Evernote, but I accidentally found out you can do it in Slack. So I have a Slack channel, which is just me talking to myself.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm sort of using it as a notes app for now. But yeah, that's really useful, because I'm never going to lose all that stuff. And I could probably pull a few blog posts out of the transcriptions at some point. So that's always useful. There you go.
Wow,
Give me a little tip there.
that is amazing. That is. You're definitely using that one.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do so many different things, like journaling, typing up notes and all this, but all I have is just multiple files that I don't look at ever again.
Yeah, I have so many notebooks. If you could see my shelf, I can count, is that 10, about 15 notebooks on one of the, how many shelves? Loads of shelves, 16, I think. I've got so many notebooks I've written over time. Some of them only have a few pages written on in the front, where I started writing them, and then I decided I didn't like that anymore. So I started a new one, because I was going to write better things in that one. And this would be the one where I'd have all my most amazing ideas, and I would look back on them. And you don't. Once you've finished one, you go into the next one. You don't look at it again. So you got to find out what works for you. I mean, I'm no expert in self-organization. In fact, I'm pretty rubbish at it. I've found a combination of things that work well for me, if I stick to them, because I get distracted quite easily, bored quite easily. Todoist is pretty good. Evernote I use quite a lot. I use the notes just on my Mac because it syncs with my phone and my iPad. So I find it really easy to just copy and paste something in there and then open it on my phone and then post it to Instagram, for example. So I like having little shortcuts like that. But in terms of recording my thoughts, I just think the faster the better. The faster you can get it out of your head, whether it's speaking or typing, and it's probably speaking.
Yeah.
You might as well just do that. Saves time.
That's amazing. Do you feel that people go for the shiny object syndrome? It's because they lack confidence and they're seeking answers then?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. I think it is, and this is something that I've had issues with, and I'm sure other people have as well, is that when you come up with your own solution, you will immediately pick fault in it, or you think you found the path you want to go down. So you've decided to niche down a particular path, either through the market or the product or whatever. You're like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to offer that to those people. And you make that decision, and then as quick as you've made that decision and that commitment, you start to question it. But when somebody else says, I think you should do that, you're like, oh, okay, well, if you say it, I believe you, and I'll go do that thing. So that's an element of shiny object syndrome. It's not always about, just being distracted by all exciting things. It's about not trusting yourself to make the right decisions for you, which is nuts, really, because you are the best person to know that if you trust yourself. The main issue with shiny object syndrome is there are so many shiny objects. There are so many different things that you can do. And what ends up happening is that you feel like if you go down that one path, you're stuck there. And that's scary, because what if it goes wrong? And then when there's other things going on, you're like, oh, maybe that's better. And then you get that adrenaline rush again, you get that excitement again, and that kind of makes you feel happy and like something's happening. And then when you hit another roadblock, you're like, maybe this was the wrong maybe this was the wrong choice. I'll go and do something else because this is too hard. So there's a few things to look at. And I think people say, oh yeah, I've got shiny object syndrome. It's way deeper than that. And I'm no expert in that field, but I just know what I've seen from working with so many people or seeing so many people and knowing so many people in the kind of mindset and coaching kind of world, that happens so much with entrepreneurs.
Have you experienced it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you find a route to it, or some sort of idea what it could be?
My main issue in the past has been getting too many opinions from people. So I'll have an idea and then I'll immediately go and seek validation from somebody else. Say, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is a good idea? And I'll speak to everybody else, and then I'll get really confused because everyone has a different opinion and comes at it from a different perspective. And then that just gets really confusing. So I eventually just decided I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, I've got loads of very well-meaning people who would give me their time for free. We'd have the occasional call, and it was great. And I knew that if I sent them a message that they would reply. So if I said, what do you think of this? That I would get a reply from them. And it becomes kind of addictive. And you learn to rely on that as almost like, sounds silly, it's almost like a drug. You know, what about this idea? Oh, that's amazing. Oh, you should do that. Yeah, I think I will actually. And you can get addicted to that feeling. And what that does is kind of pulls you away from what you actually really know that you need to do, which is, maybe it's not that exciting, but yeah, I should probably do that instead. So since I've stopped doing that so much, I found that when I allow myself to kind of sit in my own thoughts for a while, I do come up with the right answers, or I keep going back to the same thing. You know what you need to do when you just keep coming back to it, keeps kind of chipping away at the back of your mind. You're like, I have to do this. I have to. And that's what's happened with my podcast. You know, while it's been off air, it's just been chipping away at me. And I'm like, I know, I really want you back. It's like a child.
That's your intuition speaking to you.
It is.
In the self-awareness world or the spiritual world, people get, that's your intuition saying,
yeah,
it's talking to you.
You always know what you really need to do. It's just whether you're willing to actually stop and listen, or whether you're just going to try and keep squashing it and looking for something else that maybe is either easier or more realistic, or someone else said it was a better idea, or you should do this because this is more sensible, when it's not what you really want to do.
But it's trusting yourself to believe in that, right?
Yeah. It takes time. It takes work. And, I don't think anybody's ever a finished article. I think everyone has those times, when you're going sort of, it's kind of an up-leveling thing, isn't it? New levels, new devils, as Tega would say. And you will always face that feeling. It's just that the stakes are higher each time. But each time you're kind of climbing that ladder, the smaller problems become even smaller. And the bigger problems start. What used to be a massive problem or a massive decision or what felt like a really big responsibility feels like much less. So it never stops. There'll always be points where you're like, I don't know what I need to do next. But you do. You just use your experience.
If you was to give one big last tip for those that are avoiding their own personal responsibilities in what they're choosing to do, what would you tell them?
Oh, I'm not going to tell them off. You need to do it. You need to take a long, hard look at yourself.
What would you advise them from your experience?
I mean, the main words I would say is trust yourself. And in trusting yourself, I would allow yourself to give yourself the time to answer your own questions. So the tip I gave of creating voice notes or journaling, whatever, allow yourself to do that and see before you go looking for answers elsewhere and giving other people the responsibility for your life. see if you have the answers in you, and then you'll start to build your confidence in being able to, and trust yourself. So I think that's a really big thing. And now that I said it reminds me that I need to do that more, because there's, like I said, there's always something that you can be working on. I'm like the least finished piece of art ever. I'm like, there's just a little outline. The signature kind of will never happen because it's never finished. I like this analogy. It's kind of a metaphor for life of an unfinished painting. It's not over. It's not over till it's over. But yeah, everyone's always working on themselves. And I think, yeah, if you can find a way to trust that you will know the answers to what feel like really big problems or obstacles, then you'll gain the confidence to deal with your own stuff and take responsibility for it.
Wow, that sounds like a message from me.
Feels good. Feels good. I need to write this stuff down.
I have been writing this down. This is where my head's down. Yeah. I'm just writing all this down. But thank you, Claire. That is amazing to have you on. Thank you for sharing all these. Thank you for sharing all these tips. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Because this is what this podcast is about. It's just talking about, your experiences and things that you happen to witness and things that work for you. Because I know there's so many things that noise out there that people are, like you say, aren't trusting themselves, aren't believing themselves, but they know what they need to do.
Yeah.
But they just need to take that leap of faith.
Yeah. Leadership is, like you say, it's about leading yourself first, knowing who you are, knowing what your kind of rules for life are, and talking about these leaders and people that aren't probably going to behave in the same way as you. I think it's more important to not worry about them and think about how you conduct yourself and what's true to you. I think that's kind of going to always lead you towards the right answers.
Amazing. So if people wanted to find out more about you, Claire, where can they go?
Best thing is if they connect with me on Facebook, my Facebook profile. So just look me up. They can find me on LinkedIn, and they can find me via my podcast, which is called the Expert Focus Podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you, Claire, so much.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you at some point and see what comes out of your Expert Focus podcast as well.
Thank you very much.
It's always exciting.
Yes, it is.
Brilliant.